that's been convicted of a felony that is on the lam and on the run. Why is he still in the wind? Why is he not being caught? I mean, how is this guy still on the lam? Are you asking that question? I certainly am. We'll talk Lake Monticello. They're a homeowners association scrambling for $646,000. Money secured with a PPP loan during COVID. Now Lake Monticello is, frankly, they're on the hook to pay this money back. They should never have applied for $646,000. And now the Justice Department is saying, pay us back that money. We'll talk about that on today's show. Violent crown. This is a topic that is, it's just lingering. It's like a bad itch or a bad case of dandruff. It just will not go away. Violent crown and Jeff Levine is still very much something to follow. And we'll talk about how the Board of Architectural Review and Jeff Levine and this beloved movie theater. It's beloved on paper. It's frankly not that well attended. Why it could be more.
I've got an interesting story in regards to that.
Okay, why don't we weave Judah in on a two-shot? Who's got an interesting story on Violent Crown? Okay, what is that, Judah Wickower, that interesting story on what is probably the third best movie theater in a very small market? Certainly number one is Alamo at Fifth Street Station. Yeah. Then the Regal at Stonefield. Then Violent Crown. What is the interesting story you got?
Well, speaking of whether or not they have a lot of regular visitors, there was one particular visitor I heard about over the weekend. I believe an elderly fellow who was so regular that the employees at Violet Crown noticed that he hadn't shown up for a few days and called the police. They knew him so well that they knew his address. They called the police and asked for a a wellness checkup. Mm-hmm. And sure enough, the police visited his house and found him on the ground, unable to get up, and probably ended up saving his life.
He saved his life. That's fantastic. Now let me ask you this: if the movie theater was so packed with people, and are we live on LinkedIn?
We should be, yeah.
We are live on LinkedIn. If the movie theater was so packed with people, how would they know when one person does not show up to the movie theater?
Because the guy was such a regular that
I respect that.
They expected him. He may not have showed up every day. I don't know the exact details. I don't know his name or anything. But he showed up often enough that...
Did you see this on Reddit?
No. This was a story that was told in my presence.
Okay. Well.
And so he hadn't been there in enough days that they were actually worried about him.
The future for Violet Crown is ambiguous at best. As Jeff Levine is looking to make something, housing into a movie theater. And it's still something that's not at the forefront of what we're talking about. We talked about it on this show. A lot of folks in this community just anticipating that nothing is going to materialize of this story. This guy is pushing this hard to the tune of multiple visits to the BAR. He is as persistent as a woodpecker, Jeff Levine, in wanting this. And speaking of downtown business, this is another piece of business news that you guys should follow closely. Travis Wilburn owned Old Metropolitan Hall, the event space venue on the downtown mall. Oftentimes you would see guests of Old Metropolitan Hall, whether it's like a wedding reception or some kind of party, they would be out on the patio outside of Old Metropolitan Hall with silent disco headphones on, just bopping and dancing on the downtown mall as passerbys kind of just looked on and giggled because, of course, you can't hear the music at a silent disco. You got to be wearing the headset. So if you're walking by and you see 100 people, 200 people bopping and dancing, headsets, different colors, different music that they're listening to, you're going to get a little chuckle out of it. But Travis Wilburn on Friday, he sent me this information via Facebook. He said, I've sold Old Metropolitan Hall to Stefan Friedman. And that's a little bit of breaking news. I'm going to try to effort to get Stefan and Travis on the show. Stefan is also the owner of Bonnie and Reed Seafood. Stefan Freeman is the owner of Ace Biscuit and Barbecue. Stefan Freeman is the owner of Vitae Spirits. Stefan Freeman is the owner of Draft Tap Room. And now he's the owner of Old Metropolitan Hall. So here you have this distressed business, distressed asset investor, Stefan Freeman, who's made his living in a number of ways in finance, who is now pursuing distressed assets in the food and beverage space, who is maybe the most influential guy in downtown Charlottesville. And it's very under the radar that this has happened. So Freeman, I'll give you the list again in downtown Charlottesville. He owns Bonnie and Reed, where Chris Humphrey is his head chef. He owns Vitae Spirits. He bought that from Ian Glomsky. Bonnie and Reed, of course, was the Hunter Smith, was it Brasserie Saison?
Yeah.
So he buys Brasserie Saison from Hunter Smith for pennies on the dollar, basically an asset sale. He buys Vitae Spirits from Ian Glomsky. He opens a sushi joint inside of Vitae Spirits in the back. Word on the street, some of the best sushi you can find in Central Virginia is in the back of Vitae Spirits. He buys Draft Tap Room for pennies on the dollar. The previous owner of Draft Tap Room, some of those guys tied to the QIM hedge fund in town. He owns Ace Biscuit and Barbecue. He owns, he's got his hands in Little John's on the UVA corner. So over the last 24 months or so, Stefan Freeman has really done a hell of a job of putting cash on the street and buying distressed assets. Little John's was closed when he got involved there. Bonnie and Reed was part of the failing Hunter Smith food and beverage and beer empire. Draft Tap Room still has not opened since COVID. Vitae Spirit, Ian Glomsky was looking to do something else. And now he buys Old Metropolitan Hall. Travis sent this to me. He said, nearly 13 years ago, his team, alongside his partners at Stay Charlottesville, embarked on the ambitious restoration of 101 East Main Street, and they transformed it into what is known as Old Metropolitan Hall. It's a business that was designed to host unforgettable wedding celebrations, corporate gatherings, and philanthropic events. Travis's all-time vision was to create a space that showcased the vibrancy of downtown Charlottesville. And on Friday, they passed the torch to new owner Stefan Freeman. This guy is now your kingpin of downtown Charlottesville. A lot of ways, it used to be Annie McClure, Corin Capshaw were the kingpins of downtown Charlottesville. Now it's a clear-cut distressed asset investor, Stefan Freeman. You could find him drinking something wet, usually at the Marigold Bar. And in a 24-month period of time, his brands under ownership, brands under investment, assets under management, Little John's UVA Corner, Ace Biscuit and Barbecue, Draft Tap Room, Bonnie and Reed, Vitae Spirits, now Old Metropolitan Hall, plus the unnamed sushi joint in the back of Vitae Spirits. Wowzers. In 24 months. Pretty impressive right there. All right, so a lot we're going to cover on today's program. Those are two items that did not make the rundown. What's the first headline as you put the lower thirds on screen? Is this Board of Visitors?
Yeah.
Robert Hardy is the rector of the Board of Visitors. He released a 5-paragraph letter to the UVA health community right around close of business Friday. Releasing letters at close of business on a Friday is a way to circumvent media coverage. It's one of the oldest tricks in the book. Anytime you wanted a story that you had to paper the trail in press release fashion with local media, but you wanted it to have very little coverage, you'll release it on Friday afternoon. And that's what Robert Hardy, the rector of the Board of Visitors, did. He authored a letter to the UVA health community. And I'll read this letter will take me about 30 seconds to read. I'll read it to you here. I'm going to start now. These are his words verbatim. He says, on February 25th, 2025, the Board of Visitors received a detailed oral briefing from Williams and Conley LLP on the findings of its independent investigation into the matters concerning UVA Health and the School of Medicine set forth in a September 5th, 2024 letter from a group of faculty physicians. The briefing, based on the work of outside counsel, is confidential. So I'm going to jump in with my words now. He's basically saying we're not going to release the report. The Board of Visitors rector says the third-party law firm that investigated the alleged claims of fraud, phony billing, the alleged claims of medical chart changing, cronyism, bullying, alleged white-collar racketeering, we're not going to release the report to the public. We're not going to release the report to you, UVA Health. Literally saying we're not going to give you a glimpse at that report, UVA Health. He continues in this letter, his words, not mine. His words here. The briefing was the product of a thorough and independent investigation. The investigation involved interviews of more than 160 individuals, including faculty physicians who contributed to the September 5th letter, as well as scores of others who had relevant information. The investigation also involved a comprehensive review of not only of the documents provided by interviewees, but also of tens of thousands of contemporary documents from a board of set of custodians. He says, prior to receiving the oral briefing, the board had received a February 24th letter from Gladstone Jones, a counsel group of 38 interviewees, presented as a summary of his client's perspectives on events as provided during the investigation. The board will not be commenting on the letter other than to note that outside counsel evaluated all information provided during the investigation, both from those 38 interviewees and the more than 10 dozen other interviewees, and also investigated that information through document review procedures. He says in this letter that there was no outcome of, I got to choose his exact words, right, Judah? He says in this letter that there is no outcome of concern and that they're going to try to reposition things with the new interim UVA Health head.
Yeah, coming out of the investigation, we've determined, the board and President Ryan have determined that there's no basis for corrective action as it relates to healthcare billing or other regulatory compliance issues.
Can I ask some fair questions, simple questions? Why did Dr. Craig Kent resign then?
That's a great question.
Let me ask you another straightforward question. If in this letter he says, coming out of the investigation, the board and President Ryan have determined that there is no basis for corrective action as it relates to healthcare billing or other regulatory compliance issues, if that's the case, why would you not release the report?
Right.
If there was no shadiness, why not release the report?
If everything was above board, that's the same question I'd like to know.
Why did Craig Kent resign immediately after the report was presented to the Board of Visitors?
Right.
Are we?
I have another question. Was he? It sounds like he was there at the Board of Visitors meeting.
Who?
Craig Kent.
Yes, he was.
I know. Is he usually at Board of Visitors meetings?
No, he's not usually at Board of Visitors meetings. He's at some Board of Visitors meetings, but when that Board of Visitors meeting is analyzing a report by a third-party law firm pertaining to his health system, he's going to be there.
Yeah.
Are we just supposed? I mean, I think they're just treating us as if we're just dumb people.
Yeah.
You released the letter authored to UVA Health on Friday afternoon. You're trying to do it in a way where it's not going to get media attention. And look, he's right. It hasn't gotten any media attention. It's not in the newspaper. It's not in the Cav Daily. It's not on the TV. I think we're the first people talking about it since he released it on Friday afternoon.
I can't believe it's not anywhere.
How is this not in the Richmond Times-Dispatch or the Washington Post?
Yeah.
How's it not in the Daily Progress, the TV stations? And the first questions I would be asking if I was just an editor or a publisher or an investigative reporter at any of those outlets is, then why did Craig Kent resign? And if there was no shadiness, why wouldn't you just release the letter so we can see that there is no shadiness?
Yeah.
I think this is another case of people in power that are basically taken for granted, the folks tied to their power ecosystem, and basically trivializing us or thinking we're not going to follow the tea leaves. and it's unfortunate. But this is going to be the second investigative report with Virginia that is not going to be released to the public, despite the public paying for it.
Yeah.
That's sad.
It's a slap in the face.
It's a slap in the face. And if people like us and people like you and other media outlets don't start highlighting this, then this type of behavior is just going to continue and be more today's reality.
Yeah.
It is a slap in the face. Well, this might be the end of this story. How does this storyline continue? Kent's resigned, and they're not releasing the investigative report. What is next? This is an insult to the 128 anonymous doctors.
I think that's exactly what's next.
The 128 anonymous doctors who wrote the anonymous letters, they're basically being told that their claims were bogus and that they were full of the doo-doo.
Except that the
Can't resign?
top guy in the health department.
So is the next
resigned
move
right
for
after.
the 128 to respond to Hardy's letter?
That's what I would say.
You would say the 128 would respond to Hardy's letter sometime this week or next week?
I would say they are probably the best watermark, the best way to judge whether anything will change. They may not respond right away. They may have to, watch the goings on at the university, at the hospital, and note whether anything does change. But I would imagine that if UVA is saying no, everything is good, Kent leaving is just a coincidence, that we'll definitely be hearing from the 128 again.
Time will tell. Ball's in the court of the 128. Let's see what they do. But right now, Virginia's doing its very best to squash this story.
Oh yeah.
Their machine is squashing this story. And let's see if they're successful at doing that.
I don't know if it's arrogance.
I think it's the word is arrogance.
But I think this is exactly what we've seen in general from UVA for the last few years. Whether it's the murders or the pepper spraying or everything, they seem to just poo-poo anyone's concerns.
Yeah. It's arrogance. My friend, what is the next headline?
Next up, we have Dewberry.
You found, this is a good headline that you contributed to the show here. John Dewberry right now is in a trademark battle. His Dewberry Group and his Dewberry subsidiaries, whether it's Dewberry Studios, Dewberry Offices, Dewberry Apartments, Dewberry Hotels, he's got a bunch of Dewberry subsidiaries, is in a trademark infringement brouhaha with another entity. And that other entity is what? The Dewberry Engineers.
Yeah.
And the Dewberry Engineers were seeking $43 million, Judah.
I'm not even sure if they came up with that number. I think that number may have come up from the court based on basically figures taking a look at how much business has been lost or somehow affected.
A Virginia federal district court awarded Dewberry Engineers nearly $43 million in profits allegedly derived from the infringement. Yeah. Notably, Dewberry Group itself had little to no reported profits. Instead, in order to show the economic reality between the Dewberry Group and its affiliates, the latter of which was the recipient of all of the former's profits, the lower court treated all the companies as one single corporate entity, attributing the profits of Dewberry Group's affiliates to the defendant, including them in the damages calculated. Mm-hmm. So he's got a bit of reprieve for right now.
Yeah.
Put it in perspective for the viewers and listeners.
Essentially, what the court is saying is that because the because the plaintiffs only listed the umbrella group, Dewberry Group, rather than the umbrella and all of its subsidiaries, it can't ask for money, some of which would have been part of that $43 million. They can't ask for money from something they didn't sue. So because they left off the subsidiary companies, they are not allowed to ask money from those companies. And essentially, the $43 million aggregate needs to be sent back, and they need to try the case again. Because Dewberry Engineers did not include Dewberry Group's affiliates as defendants, the affiliates' profits are not disgorgeable defendants' profits as the term is ordinarily understood. In other words, only the profits attributable to the actual defendant are subject to award.
So this is what, I'm just talking out loud here, and this is purely conjecture from yours truly here. He's got reprieve on $43 million. For now.
Really, yeah.
For now, temporary. Mm-hmm. We'll see how that plays out. Why this is important is because he owns the skeleton on the downtown mall. We talked on the show earlier this year that he was looking to sell the skeleton on the downtown mall to the point that he had hired 2 commercial brokers that had brokered the deal of the Cork Hotel and of Keswick Hall previously. So established brokers. These brokers that were hired by Dewberry also paid a structural engineering firm to assess the legitimacy, the credibility of the steel structure that has been exposed to the elements in downtown Charlottesville. The structural engineering firm said the steel structure still was credible, still was safe, still was viable. The electrical components had to be pulled out, but the steel itself, the structure itself was good to use and was offering and would offer a huge head start for any hotel developer that wanted to design and develop a hotel in the downtown mall. Since that story broke, a story broke by the Daily Progress, the Daily Progress literally had the Dewberry Group call them. Had the commercial brokers call the newsroom and said, you should do a story on this. We're going to have a call to offers, a deadline of the 9th of January. Since that story broke, where the commercial brokers called the Daily Progress and said, our deadline's the 9th for offers, we've had no other follow-up coverage on this. Not from the Daily Progress, not from anyone. And now the follow-up story is that Dewberry, who was facing a $43 million trademark judgment, has now got some temporary reprieve on that judgment, at least for now. Mm-hmm. Are they linked? Who knows? But we do know that the most heinous structure in the city of Charlottesville, is that the most heinous structure in the city of Charlottesville? Can you think of anything else that is more heinous than that in the city of Charlottesville? Is the Kim's Market structure more heinous than the Dewberry Hotel on Cherry Avenue? I wouldn't say that's more heinous, would you?
Not really.
I mean, Kim's Market's not on the downtown mall.
No.
What's more heinous than that in the city of Charlottesville? Dewberry. Viewers and listeners, what's more heinous than that?
It does rank pretty high up there.
Can you think of anything else?
I mean, I can think of some eyesores, but nothing that.
What are the eyesores that you
Nothing
can
that
think
has
of?
that kind of.
What are the eyesores that you can think of?
I mean, I'm not talking anything specific. Just like buildings that have emptied and haven't been filled. Like you said, the Kim's Market building. Okay. I mean, nothing really compares to the
right. So that's the one
eyesore.
Right there. Can anyone think of any eyesores by name, location? Exact eyesores by name and location. I cannot think of one that's even close to Dewberry. Maybe you say Kim's Market, and that's on the cusp of being potentially developed by Woodard. Are the two linked? Time will tell. But if a $43 million trademark reprieve turns into maybe he doesn't have to pay that much money in this trademark infringement case, and who knows? I don't know. Maybe he decides to sit on the Dewberry Hotel after all. Because the speculation was he was selling assets to raise capital for this trademark infringement case. Time will tell.
You may still need it.
Janice Boyce Trevelyan says, Medicare fraud is such a big deal, I cannot believe there aren't charges in this phony UVA health case. Same. James Watson says, I've been wondering if that movie theater goes away, if it's going to be the end of the Virginia Film Festival, which will probably have some economic impact to the city. It's a great question, James. It's a very good question. The only reason I don't think it's going to be the end of the Virginia Film Festival is because it's backed by UVA. That's the main reason I don't think it's going to go away. Holly Foster says the Times-Dispatch in Richmond is still having issues due to the hacking of their systems, so very little local or state news. Same with the Daily Progress. Whoever hacked the Lee Enterprises newspapers did a number on these papers, folks.
No doubt.
Next headline, what do you got, Judah?
UVA fugitive.
All right, I'm going to spend 90 seconds on this. How is a 19-year-old reputed gang member, convicted felon, still on the lam? How's this guy not been caught?
He's probably smart enough to go to ground.
Smart enough to go where?
Go to ground. Just hide out.
What is this guy, a mole? Is he a groundhog? My wife made this comment yesterday. She goes, how's this guy not been caught? And then she pointed to the traffic light cameras that are on every traffic light all over the city.
Mm-hmm.
He was running around grounds where there's cameras everywhere.
Are we talking about the flock cameras?
No, talking about safety and security cameras all over grounds. We're not talking the flock cameras. UVA grounds has got cameras all over those buildings for the safety of the students.
But I don't think he ran onto the grounds of UVA and escaped there.
What makes you say that?
Because, like you said, there are cameras everywhere.
I think he absolutely ran on grounds.
I think he absolutely called a friend and went and jumped in a car somewhere. And
he was being chased through Lewis Mountain.
Yeah, but they weren't. It's not like he was running for 4 hours with somebody like 10 feet behind him. He had to have gotten away at some point.
For him to call a friend, what is this? What was the TV show where you called a friend? You phoned a friend?
$1 million.
With Regis Philbin?
Yeah, something like that.
For him to phone a friend, couldn't they ping his phone?
I don't think it works that way.
I'm pretty sure it works that way.
What? They just have his...
They're able to ping his phone and utilize location on his phone to find him.
I think depending on the company, depending on the company that made the phone and the company that the phone service is paid through, they probably have some legal hurdles to jump through in order to get that kind of information.
I have no doubt that's the case.
Available.
I have no doubt that's the case. But if you're the authorities and you make this case, convicted felon on the run from police, you're going to be able to get that information.
If you think so, I'm not so sure.
Lee Ann Wiley says, "Why did he get out?" We're all wondering that as well.
Yeah.
Lee Ann Wiley, we're all wondering that as well.
Why did he get out early? Why did he get out despite the fact that he was under investigation and potentially going to be charged with, all the malicious wounding and stuff like that? It's a very good question.
Very good question. Still, every day that goes by makes it harder to find him.
No doubt. But I think generally in these cases, the person does something stupid and eventually gets caught. That's what we found. That's what happened with the case where the man ran into the blue, the murder on the downtown mall a couple of years ago.
Oh, when he got into Lucky Blues. I think he was found in Tennessee.
Yeah, exactly. They'll eventually find him.
By U.S. Marshals. Mm-hmm. John Blair says this: I spoke with a few parents this weekend at a gathering. Here's another issue with the manhunt. Both private and public schools in the area took precautions. Kids were not allowed to go outside for recess or any other reason, though they didn't officially call it a lockdown. However, kids are asking, did they catch the guy? And the answer is no. There are some kids that are probably frightened with that answer after their schools took those actions. Something to think about, 100%. That's our family right there.
No doubt.
Our kids' school had a don't go outside, stay inside that day. And we answered our first graders' questions. And then he says, is the burnt out shell of a hotel still up on Emmett Street? Is it still up?
Emmett Street.
Across from where the Cavalier Inn used to be? Is it still up there? That's a great question for William McChesney, who's watching the program.
I haven't been over that direction in quite a while.
Bill, is the burnt up shell of a hotel still up on Emmett? That's in your wheelhouse, my friend. Please let us know that answer. And he says another eyesore, that property that was supposed to be redeveloped off Rose Hill until council blocked it, and it sets unbuilt. That's another eyesore. Absolutely. I would love if William McChesney lets us know if that burnt up hotel on Emmett is still there. Next headline, what do you got, Judah?
Next up is Lake Monticello scrambling.
You know, we were the first to report this news, I don't know, a month and change ago. Now it's made its way into the Daily Progress. The Lake Monticello Homeowners Association, which represents roughly 4,300 homes, the largest subdivision in Central Virginia, the second largest subdivision in the Commonwealth of Virginia. Bill says he believes it's been demolished, John. Thank you, Bill McChesney. I knew you would know that answer. They took a loan of $646,000 during COVID, a PPP loan. I'm kind of torn on this, okay? Here's why I'm torn on this. A, they got the money, the PPP money, right? Mm-hmm. If they were not supposed to get the loan, why was the loan offered to them?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Why was it given to them?
Why was it given to them? Now, there's language in the application where it says these entities are not entitled or cannot get these loans. And one of them specifically is the entity that is the Lake Monticello HOA, which I think is a nonprofit homeowners association. So they got, A, the Lake Monticello HOA got bad advice from someone. B, whoever was giving the PPP loans or approving or rubber stamping the PP should never have done this.
That's a far greater problem, unfortunately.
And C, now you have a 4,300 neighborhood homeowners association, 4,300 homes, that is now scrambling for $646,000 plus dollars.
Yeah.
They'll make the money up. If you do 646,000, let's just round up and call it 647,000. 647,000, divide that by 4,300 homes. You're talking $150 a house. That's literally nothing. $150 a house. Do a special assessment for $150 a house and put this story immediately behind you. Because the true damage of the 646,000 HOA PPP loan, the true damage of this story is the incompetence it portrays to prospective home buyers and the incompetence it portrays that may or may not erode home value. Put the story behind you, minimize the public relations fiasco, do the proverbial hat passing of $150 a house, pay the $646,000, $647,000 back so this story is out of the news cycle. You can even issue a press release saying we've paid this back. Don't do it on a Friday afternoon like Rector Robert Hardy did. And then get the story out of the news cycle. The longer it sits in the news cycle, the more incompetent the homeowners association looks, the more incompetent the neighborhood looks, and the more damage it does to the brand. That's free public relations advice right there for the Lake Monticello HOA. Next headline is you put the lower thirds on screen.
Next headline is Violet Crown getting closer to demolition.
Do you think the community is aware of how, outside of insiders, like John Blair is aware of this, Deep Throat's aware of this, James Watson is aware of this. Lord and Ivy says he used a burner phone to contact his friend.
Very likely.
Maybe he did use a burner phone and tossed the phone.
But even if he didn't, even if he used his own phone, it's not like somebody's sitting at some switchboard somewhere waiting for him to use his phone so they can zero in on his location and send a helicopter.
Okay, no, I get that. But in the era of cameras on every corner and on every building, and cameras in our hands, phones, how can a 19-year-old with limited sophistication and education, a 19-year-old who spent a portion of his life in jail, a convicted felon, outsmart 4 police departments?
Because we're so inundated with movies and TV shows where it's a matter of simplicity to just go somewhere and plug into all the cameras and be able to track from one to the other someone's exact movements. And it just doesn't work that way.
He jumped out of a moving car while it was still in drive.
Yeah.
And got away from state troopers. There's a photo of him being chased through the Lewis Mountain neighborhood, the backyard, a viewer and listener of this show, where German Shepherds and police are chasing him through the backyard of her house.
Okay.
It's beyond me that this guy is still on the lam at this point. It's been almost a week tomorrow?
Yeah, I think so.
Does the community know, different storyline here, outside of the insiders, that Violent Crown is still under the crossfire of Jeff Levine?
The community at large? I mean, I don't think the community at large is aware of a lot of things.
This guy's as persistent as a woodpecker. And I don't get the impression he's accustomed to hearing no often. And he strikes me as the fellow that does hear no. It just motivates him to turn that no into a yes.
I see him as the kind of person that just, if he was standing in front of someone who said no, he would turn left, take a step forward, turn right, take a step forward, take another right, and then a left, and just walk around the person.
Bill says that hotel was demolished, that burnt-up hotel was demolished in the spring of 2023. And Judah, I agree with you on that. So let's just make there goes David Toscano, guys, walking by the studio. Retired Virginian delegate. Let's say he gets approval on the Violent Crown. And let's say he can go 18 stories. I was talking about this with Bill Nitchman, my mentor. And he said, 18 stories, I want to put something in perspective for you. He pointed to the professional center. He's like, that's 4 stories. Bill built the Hulsinger building, where the melting pot is. I think he said that's 5 or 6 stories.
Yeah.
He says 18 stories would be 3 times taller than the Hulsinger building.
Even with shortened floors.
Yeah. He said you would be able to see this from anywhere in the city.
Yeah. Yeah, think of what's taller than most of the buildings in the downtown mall are 3 stories tops, with the exception of
Monticello Hotel is the tallest. What was that? 10 feet, 10 stories?
Probably, yeah.
I think we have an I Love CVille story on that. I Love CVille, tallest buildings.
But in general, most of the buildings on the downtown mall top out at 3 stories, 2 or 3 stories.
The URL is ilovecville.com/tallest buildings in Charlottesville. Draftsman Hotel is 10 floors, 121 feet. That's the tallest. Code is 10 floors. That would be right next to Violent Crown. Code, owned by friend of the program, Jeffrey Woodruff. 10 floors, built in COVID. Monticello Hotel, 9 floors. Tallest building in downtown Charlottesville is Code, the Center of Developing Entrepreneurs. And this would be 8 stories taller, 8 floors taller than that. The interesting thing about this is I mentioned at the start of the program, the man that is the most influential person in downtown Charlottesville right now is Stefan Freeman. who owns Old Metropolitan Hall, Draft Tap Room, Bonnie and Reed, Vitae Spirits, and the sushi spot in the back of Vitae Spirits?
Yeah.
Does Jeff Levine become more influential than Stefan Friedman, the food and beverage owner? Because Jeff Levine would be developing the hotel next to where the Artful Lodger is, while also potentially developing an 18-story apartment building where the movie theater is. Or do you say Stefan Friedman's more influential than Jeff Levine?
I mean, we've had questions about whether Jeff Levine's construction dreams are even necessary. I mean, we've talked about the fact that we've got plenty of high-end multifamily. Does that play into his real or perceived?
But I know we have a saturation of multifamily in Charlottesville and Albemarle, but this multifamily on the downtown mall would strike me as high demand multifamily.
Okay.
Because it's on the mall. Do you disagree?
You know better than I do.
Of the multifamily that's out there, I would think the multifamily that's on the mall is going to be the multifamily that's most appealing.
Okay, that's fair.
I'm fairly sure that his multifamily where the ABC store is, Blue Moon Diner, is full. It's full. And interestingly, there's still no tenant at Blue Moon Diner.
Yeah.
No tenant at Moose's by the Creek. No tenant at Lumpkins.
Those, I would think, would require a lot of work.
Hell yeah.
And didn't the ladies from the owners of
They moved to Shadwell, yeah.
But didn't they leave because the property owner was planning on doing something with that?
They left because of the uncertainty of the Phil Delaney estate. Yes.
So it seems unlikely that something will be moving into there anytime soon.
That's a fair point, but not the case for Blue Moon Diner.
Right, definitely.
Did anything move into Bluegrass Grill?
Bluegrass Grill, let's see.
By Salt and Kebab. Nothing moved into Bluegrass Grill, right? We have some serious vacancies here.
Yeah, that's a good question.
No,
Take a
nothing
look.
moved into Bluegrass Grill.
I mean, it's been gone for years, right?
Yeah,
You're saying nothing's been in there for that whole time?
that's what I'm saying.
I feel like there must be. No, there's something in there, I think.
In Bluegrass Grill? Is it the sandwich spot?
Yeah, I think there's, what is it, Chickadee?
Is it Chickadee? Maybe you're right. I think you're right. It's Chickadee. Curtis says it's Chickadee. All right, Mr. Shaver. Thank you, Curtis Shaver. That puppy that you added to your family is quite adorable. He's right. It's Chickadee. You don't have to look it up. I trust his judgment on that. He would know this. Good call, Sea Shave. They just got a new adorable puppy to their family.
Nice.
Very, very good looking dog right there. Bill McChesney says, it used to be nowhere in the city could be taller than the Monticello Hotel.
Yeah.
And now you got multiple ones above the Monticello Hotel.
It was a silly rule anyways.
Why is that a silly rule?
Why do you think it's not a silly rule?
Janice Boyce Trevelyan says Chickadee as well. Sorry. Thank you, JBT, and thank you, Curtis. Why do you say that's a silly rule? I don't want our skyline polluted with towers of concrete.
But there's hills everywhere. What skyline are you talking about?
There's not hills everywhere in the city of Charlottesville.
The
There's
city of
hills in
Charlottesville-
Albemarle County. There's not hills. Where are there hills everywhere in the city of Charlottesville?
I mean, I can't think of very many spots unless you're standing next to a park where you've got an unobstructed view without trees or some type of landscape features.
Hobbs. They got a black lab named Hobbs. Curtis and Julian did.
Nice.
It's a good-looking dog, Hobbs. Katie on YouTube, a CPD officer once told me that cell tower records can be pulled in instances like this. Is it possible Ellie has info and just aren't releasing it? I don't know, man. How a 19-year-old reputed gang member is outsmarted 4 police departments to this point. It's beyond me.
I mean, it really doesn't take a whole lot.
Judah, you make it sound like
Look, unless he's at home or with someone that the police know is a friend or an acquaintance of this guy, there's not really much they can do to find him.
who would take this guy into their home and help him avoid police? Whoever is providing him a hideout is going to get popped as well.
You say that, but are you sure of that?
What do you mean, am I sure of that? You can't be an accomplice to a convicted felon on the run.
He's not currently convicted.
He is a convicted felon.
Yeah.
He is already a convicted felon.
He was convicted previously. Was set free. The fact that
he's a felon right now. He is now looking at felony number 2. But he has a juvenile felony conviction on his record.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So he is a convicted felon.
That does not mean that somebody can't let him stay at their house.
You're telling me that you think if someone picks this guy up in their car,
Yeah.
while he's on the run from the police, and then drives them to their house and says, "Here, Nakeem," is his name Nakeem?
Naeem.
"Here, Naeem, you can sleep in the California King in my basement. I'll give you some Tempur-Pedic pillows and a nice little fluffy comforter. You can use this bathrobe and these slippers. Here's a Zest bar of soap, some Pantene Pro V, and I'll make you breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Just hang out here in the basement." You're telling me those folks aren't going to get in trouble?
I'm telling you that I would, if I had to guess, I would say that none of the attorney generals that we know would
Commonwealth's attorneys.
would go after that person.
I disagree with you 100%.
There's the burden of proof but why would they waste time on something like that?
Because the guy is he's a felon who's got gun and violence all over his rap sheet.
I mean, not all over it. He's got what, 2 as a younger person?
Is he at your house right now?
No.
You're going there. Is he?
I can't stand roommates. There's no way.
Is he at your house right now? Maybe they need to look at Judah's house here.
If they want to come over, they can come over.
You're nuts if you don't think that.
That I don't think what?
That the person that's harboring Naeem Hill is going to be in trouble with the law.
They might be temporarily.
You can't harbor a fugitive.
But you have to prove that person knows he's a fugitive.
Judah, it was in the news everywhere.
So, the newspaper is not even getting printed right now. You're telling me that everybody is going to be aware of all these things? I'm not saying that they're not aware.
Right,
I'm saying that the burden of proof would be. I'm saying that the burden of proof would make it a very tough sell.
We will respectfully disagree on that.
That's fine.
Agree to disagree.
Okay.
It's insane. I can't believe you're taking that stance right there.
I mean, you also think that the cops are just going to follow him by like putting together a bunch of random camera footage from around the city.
That's called policing.
That's what happens in TV shows.
Viewers and listeners, does anybody else think that Judah is off his rocker here?
You're telling me there's some central database where somebody can plug into any video camera around the city, and it just doesn't work that way.
Viewers and listeners, do you think Judah's off his rocker right here in the most kind way possible?
Have you
don't
never
think the
heard-
police are
have you
using
never
camera
heard of
footage?
stories? Have you never heard of stories where the police had to go to a business and ask them if they could review their video footage?
Yes.
And do you think it just gets do you think they just get a link that gets sent to them and they can view any of what's on there?
Yes.
Wow.
The cameras that are on the downtown mall, the police can ask any of the merchants that have cameras outside their storefronts for that footage. And the merchants are providing access to the police via some link where that footage is stored in the cloud. And they're able to track it was Jesse Matthew was found that way. Jesse Matthew, the guy who did he take out of Tempo Restaurant?
How long did it take?
Longer than
How long did it take before they got access to that?
Jesse Matthews. No, it's Jesse Matthew. They tracked him to Tempo Restaurant, Morgan Harrington and Hannah Graham. They tracked him to Tempo Restaurant through the camera footage on the downtown mall. Mm-hmm. And yes, I do believe that the police investigation and policing in general is tied to monitoring and studying camera footage.
And I believe that probably got them his name, but I doubt that it got his. I doubt that it got his exact location.
Who?
Matthew?
They saw Jesse Matthew pull a UVA co-ed out of Tempo Restaurant, picked him up on her shoulder and pulled him out.
Yeah.
And that was a key aspect of the investigation of finding Jesse Matthew.
Right.
So you're making my point for me, that using police footage is how you investigate, using video and camera footage is how you investigate crime.
Yeah, it can be useful, but it's not going to give them this guy's exact location. And it's not going to be they're not just going to, tell me, how do they get a hold of every building that has a camera? You don't think that would take some time?
It will take some time. But I think that camera footage is going to give them a clue, like the license plate or the make and model of the car that picked them up.
Oh,
and if
100%.
they have the license plate or the make and model of the car that picked them up or the driver of the vehicle, that would be a big clue in tracking down Naeem Hill.
No doubt.
So I would bet you that police officers are investigating the camera footage in the areas that he was last seen in.
Yeah, right. But that doesn't mean that they're going to have a trail map that takes them, half a day to track this guy down. We're talking about contacting businesses to get access to that footage and then creating a timeline of events where they hopefully will, like you said, find a car or an accomplice or someone on camera that can help lead them to where he's likely put gone to ground. I don't doubt that it can be done. I just don't think it's not gonna be a fast process.
What's the next headline?
Next up,
Is that basketball? We got Jim Hingley on Wednesday show, right? Elmore County Commonwealth's attorney.
Yeah.
Jim Hingley on Wednesday show. Mm-hmm. Is basketball the last headline?
We've got a new ice rink approved by Greene County.
Okay, Greene County. You want to give us the who, what, when, where, why on that one? And I'll do basketball.
Yep. Central Virginia should be seeing another ice skating rink. The Greene County Board of Supervisors approved a special use permit for the project just last Tuesday night. The vote was 4-1 to approve, and the permit is for a Charlottesville-based Ice Park Holdings LLC. And they'll be constructing a rink off of 29 in Ruckersville. I think it'll be great. I'm glad we're getting something like this back in the area.
I concur. Having the ice rink in the area is a must. The fact that it's in Greene County concerns me, not because it's Greene County, but you need an area that's higher density. And if an ice rink could not work in the downtown mall, why is the ice rink going to work in Greene County? Just a very fair question.
Fair question.
Ice rink could not work did not survive or sustain in downtown Charlottesville, one of the highest density spots in the region. Why is it going to work in Greene County? Some would make the argument that an ice skating rink is a destination, so it does not need density. I push back on that. Everything needs density in close proximity to customers, and it did not work in downtown Charlottesville. Mm-hmm. John says this, I think both you and Jerry are correct. Absolutely, the police department uses camera footage to solve crimes, but you know Lewis Mountain, I can see some escape paths where there would be very few cameras to capture anything unless Ring cameras caught something. That's another question. If you had a Ring camera at your house, would you voluntarily give up the cloud video footage of your home Ring camera?
Yeah.
To help the police catch a criminal. Would you, Judah?
If I had one?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't see why not.
I would too. Absolutely. I would absolutely do that. The last headline, we'll talk about it tomorrow on the Jerry and Jerry show, guys, at 10:15 a.m. Virginia's last home basketball game of the year is against Florida State. It's tomorrow night, 9 o'clock, ACC Network. The Wahoos may be playing at Ron Sanchez's last home game, have an opportunity to maybe get a victory after getting pummeled by Clemson. Florida State, a record very similar to UVA's, 16-13 overall, 7-11 in conference play. Virginia's 14-15 overall and 7-11 in conference play. So you win this in Virginia, you go to 8-11 in ACC play, 8-11, and you have basketball games to close the year before the ACC tournament against Syracuse, at Syracuse, and then the ACC tournament starts the following week. Two regular season games left, one at home against Florida State and one on the road against Syracuse. 2 games in what could be Ron Sanchez's last regular season as head coach of UVA. Time will tell. Judah Wickhauer, yours truly, Jerry Miller, on the I Love CVille show on a Monday. So long, everybody.